And thanks for stopping by and seeing what I'm up to. My name is Nikki B, and I'm glad to have you here with me. We're going to continue now on growing our marijuana book set. We're on the mastery set, so here we go.
Chapter 7, The Good Stuff. Finally, you've reached the chapter about cloning, planting, and harvesting the best possible plants. Advanced cloning. By this point, knowing that you're only interested in female plants should be second nature for a master grower such as yourself. You should also know that cloning from feminized seeds is a less than recommended idea. Feminized seeds are known to be genetically unstable, and it is therefore a best practice to take clone cuttings from a vigorously growing female from within your crop. Be vigilant to ensure that your parent plant is still growing strong. As you take cutting after cutting, you may end up with a plant that is no longer the strong specimen that it once was. This still holds true when cloning clones, because clones are effectively the same plant as the parent. There is no downside to cloning clones, as long as they have reached a mature enough size to sustain losing a cutting for cloning. The most preferred method is to keep one strong female in a vegetative state so that you can keep taking a healthy supply of clones from her. To keep a female in a vegetative state, don't change her day-night cycle to the 12-on, 12-off cycle used to stimulate flowering. Keeping her in the 18-on, 6-off cycle means that you won't see effective flowering, if any buds at all, but you will have a sort of queen bee that will generate a healthy crop for you to turn into bud-producing machines. Growing plants from clones means that you don't have to continually purchase seeds, and it also means that you can select the best characteristic from your crop and pass them down. This is essentially basic genetic engineering through trait selection. Cloning is also the most reliable way to ensure that your crop is composed of all females. While the beginner's edition discussed a number of different, less reliable methods of sexing your plants, the pros all use cloning. It is reliable, effective, and relatively simple. What else could you ask for? The process. Start the cloning process by selecting a strong and vigorously growing tip on your parent female. Make sure that the tip is a minimum of 2 inches long and air to the side of longer. Step 1. Cut the tip from the parent plant at the nearest node. Use either a sterilized razor or a sharp pair of strong scissors. If you make a quick, clean cut at the node, the parent plant will produce 2 new growing tips from that node site, effectively doubling the number of cuttings, clones, that can be taken next time. Move on quickly to step 2. You want to minimize the time that the fresh cut is exposed to air. Prolonged exposure to air can seriously inhibit the clone's ability to transport nutrients and lay down roots. If you are taking multiple clone cuttings at one time, submerge the cut ends in water while they wait for you to move on to step 2 to protect them from the debilitating effects of prolonged air exposure. Step 2. Recut the stems of your new clones if necessary to create an angle. An angled cut exposes more surface area for the new plant to draw in nutrients. You should also scrape the outer skin of the branch away, again to expose more surface area. Only do this right before dipping, the next part of this step, because increased surface area for the absorption of nutrients also means increased surface area for exposure to air. Now that you have your new clone cut, dip the freshly cut end in horticultural rooting gel. Available at most home and garden centers, gel provides a more even coating of the base than some traditional powdered rooting solutions. Step 3. Now place the clone in your rooting medium. Rooting media can vary from soil, sand, rock wool cubes, small pots, peat pellets, or seed compost. Place the clone in a high-sided propagator and ensure that it has a humid environment. Using a spray bottle, mist the young clones daily for at least the first few days. Wipe any excess moisture off the interior of the propagator lid with a cloth. Footnote 1. For those of you who grow under a strictly organic regimen, you can substitute honey for your rooting solution. The rooting medium should be very moist, and it should have a consistency similar to that of a wet sponge. Ensure that the medium tightly surrounds the cut end of your clone. You should see roots developing within 10 to 14 days. At this time, the clone can be transferred to a normal growing pot to start the vegetative growth stage. Take care to limit air exposure to the new roots when transplanting your young plants. Using clones to determine sex. If you are unsure of the gender of your plants, cloning can be used to sex your plants. Once you have taken clones from the plants in question, the first step is always to label which clones came from which plants. If you mix the clones up, then you could end up doing more harm than good, potentially removing females and leaving males. One virile male mixed in with your female crop could pollinate several plants and utterly destroy your crop. Once you have your labeled clones separated from the parent's growing space, force them to flower by changing them to the flowering 12 hours on, 12 hours off light cycle. The female calyx has fine hairs known as pistils. The male calyx has small balls that are pollen sacs. This will provide positive proof which plants are female and which are male. Male cannabis plant sex characteristics. Calyx will produce signs of pollen sacs. Pollen sacs will resemble small balls. Female cannabis plant sex characteristics. Calyx will produce signs of pistils. Pistils resemble fine hairs. Plant propagators. Plant propagators come in a variety of flavors, but they all are designed to ensure stable and nurturing environments for vulnerable plants. Basic propagators are little more than plastic trays with fitted lids. The more advanced options have trays or compartments to keep moisture levels stable, and some even come with electric heating units or hot pads underneath. Growth training. Every growing environment is shaped differently, and you can train your plants to grow to the best fit for your space. While growing in the vegetative state, growers use a process known as LST, low stress training, to train their plants to grow a specific way. Low stress is important. Undue stress or shock to your plants can weaken them and reduce the number and quality of the buds that they ultimately produce. It is important to wait until plants are at least 6 inches tall before starting any growth training programs. Plants that have not yet reached this level of maturity are susceptible to loss if growth training programs are implemented. The goal of LST is to train your plants to grow outwards and spread to create more bud-forming branches. This means that your light is more efficiently utilized. Light hitting pots and soil produces nothing for you. If your plants spread out to form a sort of canopy in your grow space, they absorb more of the light you are paying for and turn into energy to grow and produce potent buds. Additionally, and this is more pesky science, the inverse square law states that the intensity of light radiating from a source is equal to the square of its distance from the source. This means that the farther away from a light source something is, the lower the intensity of that light. So the lower branches of your cannabis plants are getting substantially lower amounts of light than the uppermost branches. LST uses string or tape to physically manipulate your plants and restrain their vertical growth. In this way, they grow to branch out and spread, increasing the number of growth sites and the average light intensity across the plant's bud nodes. These are growth sites that are found at the intersection of the branches to the stalk and are later responsible for the production of buds during the flowering phase. Step 1. Start your LST program in the early vegetative growth phase when your plant is at least 6 inches tall. Find the approximate midpoint of the stem and tie a string around it. Secure the other end of the string to the edge of the pot with tape or whatever other method you see fit. Step 2. Once every other day, add a new string to the plant at a higher spot than the last. Secure the string to the pot like the first. Keep adding the strings in a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion to train the stalk to grow outward rather than upward. Step 3. Because your cannabis plants are meant to grow vertically, they are not able to adequately support themselves when growing horizontally. You can support the outward growth with sticks or stakes, or you can bend healthy branches into the soil and cut them as you would clones. This means applying a rooting gel to the cut area and sinking it into the soil. These supports lay down roots that help draw nutrients later when the plant is in the flowering stage. Vertical extensions of the stalk can also be pinched off to encourage the stalk's growth to split into horizontal branches. When I say pinch off, I'm talking about the pruning method that encourages the horizontal growth of the plant. It is simply clipping the main stem to force the growth of 2 new stems below the cut. Maintain your vegetative growth light cycle of 18 hours on, 6 hours off, or even up to a full 24 hours on until you are satisfied with the height and width of your plants. The 18:6 ratio conserves energy, but some growers stand by the 24-hour model. Light-based LST. Plants grow toward the light. This is why as a grower you have to constantly check the distance of your lights from your crop or you end up with scorched plants. Manipulating your lighting is also an effective way to force your plants to grow in a controlled manner. If their lighting is low and wide, plants naturally spread and become bushy. High, narrow lighting encourages upward growth, usually not what you're looking for. Manipulating your lighting is often recommended as a supplement to physical LST methods simply because there is little reason to mess with your plant's light source all of the time. Most growers are looking for a quick, quality yield. Intense and consistent lighting is best for your plants and means less work for you. Flushing your crop. I don't mean down the toilet. Once you've switched from the 18-6 lighting cycle to the flowering forcing 12 hours on, 12 hours off, it can take up to 2 weeks for the buds to form. The hairs on the buds are initially white, then change to an orange color, followed by brown or red. When the buds reach the last color in the progression, it is time to flush your crop before harvesting. During the flowering process, the buds take on a large amount of the nutrients that the plant took in during the vegetative growth process. The saturated levels of these chemicals and nutrients can negatively affect the taste and quality of your product, so it is necessary to flush your crop and alleviate these elevated levels. Knowing when to flush. To determine the appropriate time to flush, examine your buds with a magnifying glass. The glass should be powerful enough to see the individual drops or globes of resin, trichomes, that appear on your buds as dew to the naked eye. Over time, these drops change color from clear to milky to amber. Of course, the appropriate time to flush varies from strain to strain, so it may take a crop or two to get the hang of it. Keep a grower's journal so that you can record when you flushed and can tweak your process later with future crops to get better results. As a general rule, buds are ready to be flushed when they are fully formed and the resin present on the trichomes is just changing from milky to amber. Flushing is probably the simplest procedure associated with growing. The difficulty is knowing when is the best time to start. To flush your crop, simply water your plants with pH-neutral water. Water with a pH of 7.0 or better yet, distilled water. Water often enough to keep the entire root ball soaked once daily and water until excess drains from the bottom of the pots. Flushing takes between 5 to 10 days and it is advised to lean towards the longer length than the shorter. Footnote 2. The color of your bud's hairs can vary greatly with the strain that you select, so this color progression is a baseline. Research the specific color progression for the strain that you are growing to indicate the maturity level of the buds. Though this is a generous watering process, take care not to allow the plants to stand in water and to prevent the roots from being submerged. This can suffocate the roots and encourage mold growth. There are a number of flushing agents available on the market, though there is quite a bit of speculation as to their efficacy. Use them if you would like to, but know that a patient flushing with distilled water is always effective. You know that your flush has been effective when the leaves on your plants begin to change from deep green to yellow. This, in conjunction with the color of the resin on the trichomes, indicates to you that it is time to harvest. Again, keep a grower's journal and take copious notes and pictures to record what works, what doesn't, and what should be addressed to yield the absolute best product possible. Harvest. This is the part you've been waiting for. When harvesting your crop, cut the buds from the plant a few inches below the bud along its main stem. You want the buds to retain their THC-rich resin, so take care not to touch or disturb the buds when harvesting. Hang each bud in an air-circulated room, closet, or small enclosed space. Buds can be hung on string or they can be spread out on a screen. Anything that allows full airflow and won't squash the buds works. Some growers use cages as they have convenient attachment points for lines to hang the buds on. Your harvested buds are appropriately dried when the stem can be snapped like a dry twig. Drying your harvest is an important part of the process. Drying removes excess moisture and concentrates the cannabinoids in the bud. While drying, you can clean the buds by removing loose leaves from the stem, but it is best to otherwise leave them undisturbed. Note that when drying, your buds will emit a very pungent odor, so take the necessary precautions to mask the powerful fragrance to deflect any unwanted attention. You're almost there. Curing. Curing is the last step of the preparation process. Curing is like drying, though instead of simply removing moisture, curing allows some of the chemicals and sugars stored inside the plant to break down. It is not advised to skip the curing step, though you may be eager to break into your newly harvested crop, as failing to cure can cause harsher smoke and a less pleasant and developed flavor. Curing is a simple process that can last as long as several weeks or as little as 1 week. The recommended curing time may vary based on the strain you have selected to cultivate, and it can also vary based on your particular taste. Keep notes regarding the duration of your curing and the impact that it has on the quality of the final product. To cure, fill a container with a fitted lid between half and 2/3 full of buds to be cured. Mason jars are common curing vessels, but a large crop calls for quite a few mason jars. Any similar container will do. Cap the container with its lid, but leave it loose enough to allow air to enter or escape. Do not seal the container, because there may still be some moisture in the buds. Inspect your containers for mold regularly. This is where smaller portions and clear containers come in handy. If any product shows signs of mold, remove and discard it immediately to prevent the mold from spreading. Once you are satisfied with the curing process, your product is ready to use or to sell. The exact time it takes to cure is really the preference of the grower or end user. During the curing process, you can smoke or otherwise consume test portions to gauge the duration and completeness of the curing process. While it is well known that curing yields the best quality product, there is no reason you can't utilize product directly after drying it. Just be forewarned that it is a vastly inferior product, 10 times out of 10 compared to product that has been correctly cured. If you intend to sell your product, you will have a hard time getting any repeat business if your product is sold uncured.
And that's where we're stopping today. I would like to thank you again for popping in and seeing what I'm doing. My name is Nikki B, and I really do appreciate every like and every subscribe. So hit that button today so we can continue on our book on learning how to grow marijuana. Take care, be kind to one another. Life is way too short.